while Florian will start his presentation in a moment. Now it's time for me to hand over to our first speaker, my colleague Nadine Constant from the European Commission, for a brief introduction. Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you, Ingeborg, and good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to see that so many people are here today to hear the news about the new media carbon calculator. So I will tell you the story for you that haven't heard it yet. So it started with a stakeholders dialogue in 2021 that led to a common statement from the stakeholders in February 2022, where we finally started the journey of developing a common carbon calculator for a greener and sustainable audiovisual sector. And the tender was won by Yamdu, and Florian and his team have done an incredible job of developing this tool together with us. So with that, I will let him introduce the tool. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them afterwards. Florian, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Nadine. And thank you, everybody, for hosting this. And of course, thank you, everyone, for joining and interrupting your busy production day to talk about green production. And I will share my screen, and you should see the screen in a second, and the slides, I hope, are loading. So I hope everybody sees the presentation. So welcome to the presentation of the Media Carbon Calculator. What is today about? So first, I was asked to give you like a high-level introduction to green production. Now, I know this is a very special session. First, I'm very honored that this is kind of the German-Austrian session. So herzlich willkommen. But of course, I also know that in Germany, in Austria, also like in France, of course, there are big national calculators in place. There is already sustainability tied into the funding system. So forgive me if a lot of stuff might be a bit redundant to a lot of you that might already be experts in the field. But let's not forget, the media carbon calculator, as we will see in a minute, is made for the entire European countries and all productions there. So that's why we do this roadshow before Christmas in a lot of European countries. Of course, the major part will be a deep dive into the media carbon calculator to show you how it actually works. Then I was also asked to show how the media carbon calculator, or rather its API, can be used in other tools. And then we will talk about setting up an account. And of course, we will have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the very end. So if you already have questions, you can start collecting them in a chat, no matter if it's English or German, but we will do all the answering in the very end. Los geht's. So just in case you don't know me, well, Ingeborg, thank you very much for the kind introduction. So I'm Florian. I used to be a film producer, but many, many years ago, I switched to software. We do Yamdu. That's a project management tool, like for script imports, scheduling, call sheets, stuff like this. But also I'm dealing with workflows in our beloved industry basically every day. I'm also a member of the Hollywood Professional Association, Movie Labs Industry Forum, and Trusted Partner Network. So with all those associations, we basically talk about improving workflows, bringing things to the cloud, and of course also making production workflows more sustainable. On a private level, there are only two things, as Ingeborg knows, to describe me. Quite simple. I love good food and I love good movies. And you know how it is. So the more elaborate a dish might be, it's very hard to think about all the ingredients and what such a dish is been made of. And that's exactly the same for movies, right? So the more complex a serialized production, a feature film gets, the harder it is to break it down. And that's what we want to do together today. We want to break it down, of course, here, not in the means of money, but in the means of carbon emissions and its carbon footprint. So let's go for this. First of all, a lot of you, I guess, know this data. It's based on an article in the Times magazine of last year done with Sam Reed, a friend of ours of the Sustainable Entertainment Alliance. And they were kind of analyzing what are we actually talking about, right? When we talk about carbon emissions in our industry. And they say, well, you know, a small indie movie is probably a couple of 100 metric tons. So as you know, it's measured in metric tons due to the GHG protocol. But then, you know, large productions are already in the thousands of metric tons. And then, you know, they said this could be the equivalent to 600 to 700 US households per year. So as you know, this might be a tricky comparison because it depends where are those houses, what is the power grid and all this stuff. But, you know, maybe it's also like 1,000 households in Germany or Austria or something. So it is already quite something. And of course, if we talk about larger productions, there could be even more emissions. Our assumption is like in this European tour, your productions will be more kind of in this range on the left side, but we've already seen also during testing, large domestic productions or international co-productions that, of course, also go in the thousands of metric tons. As a lot of people might know, this study by Max Planck Institute, what does this all mean? Well, kind of a metric ton of CO2e could result in 3 square meters of Arctic ice melting down, gone forever, which could mean, like for a Hollywood production, that even an entire soccer stadium is unfortunately gone forever. Now, a lot of people think, especially in Europe, well, I do my tiny little documentary or this little feature film. Well, it's just also about the sheer masses of productions that we do in our industry. If you think about all the 6-digit numbers of new titles that are listed, for example, on IMDb, of course, that's also kind of commercials and shorts and everything. But it is an industry that, of course, also contributes to climate change. And that's the idea of the European Commission to say, well, with the Green Deal, that should include all industries, all verticals, and of course for the audiovisual sector, for the film and television industry especially, that's what the media carbon calculator is made for. And again, just as a little reminder, kind of what we do here and what is the base, it's of course the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, GHG, and the Sustainable Entertainment Alliance made a recommendation 2 years ago, like how to use the GHG protocol and its categories for our industry. And you know, there's like scope 1, scope 2, so things that are kind of emitted directly or kind of indirectly by a corporation itself that could, for example, be a network, a broadcaster, etc. But of course, we are talking here probably more in the area of what is then scope 3, upstream activities. There are also downstream activities. Let's focus on the left side. And there are a lot of categories that matter. Of course, we do not think about leased assets or capital goods, but of course, you all know from producing that, you know, travel and waste and energy and all this does matter for productions. And of course, if you deliver, for example, a production of film to a network, you automatically kind of become like the scope 3 for the reporting of such a network. And of course, this will matter even more in the future with CSRD. Well, of course, let's see the last day's decision on the Lieferkettengesetz, the supply chain directive is not heading exactly in the same direction maybe as it should, but let's see, there will be more and more reporting standards. And the idea of the media carbon calculator is, of course, to have like a low barrier entry point across Europe to actually fulfill such reportings. So for the media carbon calculator, you will see a lot of categories that you might already know from, for example, the German green shooting calculator, also the Austrian calculator by the Lower Austrian Film Commission. But it does not cover all the things that such calculators might offer. So the idea of the original tender by the Commission was to focus on the big drivers and prioritize, hence, like for those categories that matter most. I mean, don't get me wrong, everything matters. But of course, as this first phase of the media carbon calculator, we had to start somewhere. And this was already specified in the tender. And then later also we had Klimaktiv on board. You know, Klimaktiv is the company, for example, behind the Austrian and German calculator, also for Switzerland and Northern Italy, and also Philipp Gassmann, who is also a consultant in this project. So this means we had to prioritize and start, and then of course travel and energy, as you probably know, are the big driving forces, and we also offer some things beyond this, but we will see this in a second. The idea of the media carbon calculator is to provide such data and factors not only like for a specific country or not only for like entire Europe, but to distinguish. We will see there are some kind of European-wide factors that are being used, and then also a lot of national factors that are actually here in place for the very first time. And as a starting point for the EU 27 member states. We also try to like focus on consumption-based data only in this first phase of the media carbon calculator, and very easy to understand metrics and units that hopefully everybody can easily find across productions. There are two, let's say, data tables. This is the first one that Klimaktiv has prepared, also like in conjunction with DG Environment, the environmental unit of the European Commission. The first one is focusing on, well, here it says conventional. I don't really like the term, let's say non-renewable fossil-based options for productions. Those could be those EU-wide factors for diesel, because we don't distinguish, of course, if a liter of diesel is burned in France or Germany or Austria. But there are also very national specific factors made available for the first time in such a dimension, for example, for hotels, overnight stays, or catering, like specialized for on-set catering. And then there is a second table, and that's dealing with the green, renewable, sustainable alternatives. As you can see here, for example, a vegetarian or vegan catering as a counterpart, or train rides versus flights, etc., etc. So this is the background of the media carbon calculator. And now, of course, I want to dive into the tool. So Uta will be sharing a couple of links, including the landing page where you can actually access the media carbon calculator. The media carbon calculator is free of charge. The only thing you do need is a so-called EU login. You might already have an EU login, for example, if you got funding by the European Commission, if you have entered like official portals, it's always the same EU login that is being used here. If you don't have one, it's also kind of a very quick registration process. Now, I'm already registered. That's why I'm directly led into the tool. And in this case, I see an overview of all by projects. So this is in English, no worries. You could also switch it here to German or other languages, but let's keep it here in English. Now, one thing that we have here for the user settings, that could be something that comes already from the EU login, but we add some additional information for statistical purposes. We will also see this later in the project itself. So one of the main goals of this project is, yes, to provide it free of charge to the EU member states, but also to kind of gather data. But no worries, it's always anonymized data if we talk about statistics. Some of you might know a couple of years ago, the European Audiovisual Observatory, for example, tried to find out on behalf of the Commission, what are we talking about when we say like carbon emissions in the audiovisual industry kind of across entire Europe. And they saw it's very hard to find comparable data, actually to find data at all, right? So this is already prepared to also being shared, for example, with the observatory, but no worries, again, then data, of course, in the background is anonymized. With your account, you have access to your projects, and you see a couple of projects from my previous demos here below, but of course, you can also create your own project. So let's do this here. So in this case, let's say this is like the, I don't know, Berlin Nights or whatever we call it, and we could have a production company, right? It's maybe Studio Berlin GmbH. And this could also be like an Austrian company, right? No worries. And then, of course, you can say, where is this production company located? Now, what's important is you can use the media carbon calculator anywhere in the world. You don't need to be a member of the EU 27 states, right? So the production company can be everywhere. And then we have something like a project status. This is actual or estimate. So in like the German world, in the green shooting or Klimaktiv-based calculators, that's exactly the same as like target budget, like Soll, Ist-Bilanz, right? That's what it reflects. It does not affect the calculations per se. And of course, in many, many European states, nothing like this is yet in place. So most people go directly for actual, because you don't have to provide a funding institution with an upfront target budget, but it's just possible to flag it here. The PIC number is just, if you have that, enter it, great, amazing. If you don't know what this is, don't worry. So then we have the primary production country, principal photography. This now matters, of course, for the EU 27 member states, and this will affect the calculations. So it matters what you choose here, as we will see later, for all the national-based factors. Then what kind of project is it? Like, is it television? What is the budget? So all this, again, is then later anonymized. It's just important to compare projects against each other. For example, by number of episodes, if you have a large series or show, right, and somebody else is producing a small documentary, then, of course, we need some more information to actually compare this data. Then also already introducing, does the production have a sustainability manager? This is also, we see in other countries that all of a sudden, hey, how can I become a sustainability manager? So I think there is a great interest. Of course, here, Germany and other countries are a bit ahead, but this is, of course, a very special thing still in other member states, not Germany and Austria, where this, of course, is kind of becoming a standard. Then the year of production again matters. I put here the year 2025. The great thing about the media carbon calculator is it's not only free of charge, it will also be updated on an annual basis. So Klimaktiv is, of course, an ongoing partner, and each year they will take a look across entire Europe if there are any additional, information by some, authorities like Umweltbundesamt, etc., to see if factors, for example, need to be updated, for example, if it comes to the national power mix and stuff like this. And all the other stuff, again, is just for statistical purposes to compare projects in a better way. Now, here we have our project, Berlin Nights. And if I enter it, well, of course, this is best case. It has 0 emissions, but of course, we need to start first to enter things. As you can already see, the summary table looks different than the tables you might know, for example, from green shooting, but I will come back to the summary and the reports in a couple of minutes. Let's first enter some data. The big categories then to the right is where you actually enter the data, and they might already look familiar to many of you because, of course, it's things that kind of repeat themselves across all the calculators being used in the field. So the first one is energy, and there could be studios or locations or post-production facilities or production offices. So far, it always works the same. So you have a certain activity, right? So for example, we shoot a set called the King's Hall or King Hall, right? And this might be kind of in, I don't know, Berlin Studios A, whatever this might be. And maybe this is during shooting, and it is a studio. And it has kind of a selection now for the power type. So is this just the national mix, or is it certified green electricity? Let's say this is kind of the national mix, right? And then we have like a power consumption. I just enter a random number, 4,000 kilowatt hours. And this gives you immediately a result in CO2e in kilograms. Now, in this case, already the media carbon calculator is using like a national factor, in this case for Germany. And then you can combine it with heating, especially in those times. Maybe we also need heating. And for example, we have 200 liters of heating oil, right? You could also enter them similar as like in a spreadsheet. Let's say there is also Bob's Diner. That's a different set that we are shooting and in a different studio, and that's maybe Studio B or the other studio, whatever. And in this case, let's say they're, they can prove they just have like green electricity and just, maybe it's also 4,000 kilowatt hours, just, coincidentally. And of course, you see there's a huge difference, obviously. That's, by the way, very interesting now also with the media carbon calculator to compare. We've already been last week, Nadine and I, into Spain, Portugal, or in the Nordics, where, for example, there's not so much difference anymore between the national mix and green electricity. So you also see how the part of renewable energy is kind of rising in the general mix overall. And then, of course, there are also other options, for example, for heating, for example, for biogas. And let's just say it's not comparable, but let's say enter this. But you see that the media carbon calculator is entering or offering immediately the unit that is a fit. So you don't have to think about units. You can just punch in the data. And then there could be, many, many more things. So basically, you just add those in the granularity you like in an Excel spreadsheet. What you can then do is you can also search. So for example, if I start typing king over here, it's of course just giving me this result. You always have the sub total for this specific category here. You see the last edit and stuff. You can also bulk edit, or of course you can also delete one single entry. So that's kind of just the basics. Always the same thing over here, how it works. Same for locations, etc. Now, the next big thing is probably travel in our types of productions. I don't know if it's 50, 60, whatever percent of a production. It heavily depends, of course, but travel will matter, I'm pretty sure. And here, let's say we have an actress, right, called Meryl Sweet, right? And she has to stay during shooting in not only a hotel, in a luxury hotel. So there again, different types that the media carbon calculator is offering, and maybe it's 40 nights. So 40 overnight stays, luxury hotel, I have immediately the result. Again, this is also tied in this case to the national factor. And then maybe I could also do a different thing. I could say my lighting, grip, crew, there for the entire time of shooting, right? In a, maybe let's say regular hotel in this case. And maybe that's 1,000 overnight stays, and I can combine this, right? So it's really up to you how granular you want to enter this. Those of you that know green shooting, Green Prisma, or the Austrian calculator, you already see, of course, this is kind of a higher level. And as I said before, more focused on the consumption basis of all the activity data. But of course, you could also say we have, I don't know, Fred, our gaffer. And he's a great guy. He's staying in an apartment. And then, of course, in an apartment, I don't know, I have him 30 nights here. There you just need the square meters. Maybe in Berlin, it's a very small studio apartment, 25 square meters. And then, of course, that is an even more sustainable way. And that's how kind of you can enter your accommodation types. Then the flights, let's say Meryl needs to come from Los Angeles to Munich. And let's say this is, I don't know, for one way, 6,800 kilometers. I'm not quite sure. But that's kind of where you can say, okay, this is just the distance at the person distance. So if you have several people on the flight, you just multiply this. This is a very simplified flight calculator, which goes just by persons travel per distance. By the way, for all those things, also for accommodation, for example, you can always leave a note if you want. And for example, say needs to stay in a 5-star hotel per contract. And we will see later where this matters in the reports. And you can do this also for flights and everything else. Then, of course, it would be way better if possible, unfortunately not from Los Angeles to Munich, but to go like by train, and you can also say those are all the train rides for my production crew in week 1 or whatever. So you can combine this as whatever you like. Again, it's all the persons and the kilometers together. And what's also great, and it was a lot of work for Klimaktiv, by the way, to also do this for all the train grids across Europe, as there are, as you can imagine, huge differences when it comes to the train grid, but still, of course, in all the countries, it's the most sustainable way in traveling here, apart maybe from a bike and commuting. So here you have like the fuel as well, because you probably might need production cars. Again, you could punch in like every gas station receipt. We don't recommend this here because let's not forget the media carbon calculator is also something like as a low barrier starting point. So you might already be in production, and maybe from accounting, you get like, okay, those are all our production cars in week 1. And maybe we combine everything that's gas driven in this case. And then we say, well, I don't know, let's make 1,200 liters. And then you could say, well, unfortunately, we had a generator, or not a generator is not unfortunate, but unfortunately it has to be diesel in this case. We didn't get anything else. And let's just assume, of course, this is also 1,200 liters coincidentally. And that's, of course, as you can see, already kind of the worst thing you can do. But then there's also maybe production cars week 1 that are, I don't know, let's compress natural gas maybe as an alternative here. And then you see you can choose from many, many, many different fuel types, your CNG, and it automatically changes again the units. So again, this is not comparable to the liters amount, but at least you can see it's already a bit more sustainable as an alternative. And that's how you can basically choose from also a lot of fuels. Maybe we got like an HVO 100 generator, and of course you see immediately the difference. So the media carbon calculator is prepared also for a lot of fuel types that are not existing so far in all the EU 27 member states, but at least it's prepared for this. And then let's come to my favorite part, catering. So we have like on-set catering. And let's say this is for week number 1. And you could do the following. You could say this is like omnivore or like, you know, mixed diet or whatever. And you have a choice of kind of this, vegetarian or vegan. And let's say like for the entire crew in this week, our caterer tells us there have been 1,000 meals served. And then of course, I could also say like for the same week, I have, for example, some vegans, right? And maybe unfortunately not as many, but maybe also like 120 vegan meals. So that's, for example, one way to enter all the meals across your production. And then again, in this case, we do consider the national factors. This has also been a huge challenge for Klimaktiv because, as you can imagine, it needs to consider what vegetables, etc., can be grown in a specific country, what needs to be imported, and stuff like this. And this means like it's a standard average full catering for like a 10-hour shooting day, right? It's not as granular as, for example, the green shooting calculator, where you have those different meal types. So this is really just like for this specific country, but then 3 types of like an overall set catering per meal served. And then we have the set construction part in the departments. So we know in the departments, of course, there are other things that matter as well, like, you know, for costumes and, you know, are they rented and do they need to be cleaned and stuff and props. But again, as I said before, prioritizing this, we said, let's go first with construction materials that you might get from your set construction departments, like the King Hall needs to be manufactured in a studio, right? And let's say this is like MDF board, right? Or it could be flooring or whatever. There are a couple of materials already there. And also, as you might know it from our national calculators, also, for example, you can enter the thickness and then say, okay, this is 600 square meters. And then, I don't know, for the same set, we also had let's say, I don't know, wall paint, and this is then of course in liters, and it was maybe 200 liters of wall paint and stuff like this. So you just keep entering all the information for the set construction. So by now, of course, our little summary and carbon budget has been growing to 25 metric tons. And you see here, as I said before, that this works a bit different than other calculators, because the focus is here to have in one chart first the non-renewable activities, and then the renewable or green alternatives as activities, because one of the goals of the media carbon calculator is, of course, especially in countries where the entire topic is quite new, to always show, well, maybe, are there alternatives out there? Maybe ask your, for example, rental house, are there other generator types or battery packs compared to diesel, et cetera, et cetera. So really to trigger also some thoughts on this stuff. And then we come to the exports. So there is a PDF export, so you can always run the official PDF export with the report of the European Commission. See this here. It should be shared. So basically, you see here the report for this. I had a typo, many typos. I'm sorry for that. For my production company, and then also, who created that report and what is actually the current summary. You can also export to Excel. Excel export will provide you not only with this summary tab, it will also show you the subcategories and all the information here. So it's not only let's just click here, editing, so I can do something. So you also see, for example, the studio stuff that we have been entering, or for accommodation, we also see here the little note, right? So there you can get all the data out of the media carbon calculator if needed. And then last but not least, there is here the project details. So you can, of course, edit if you see there is like a lot of typos in something. Then, of course, you can always go back to the project settings and kind of change things, or if things in general change on the project part. You could also potentially change the country. Right. So there, of course, it will warn me because this will affect the calculations. And as we can see here, it really got down. So if we do exactly the same stuff in Austria, we actually have less carbon emissions. Again, this is not like a battle, right? It's not a competition, but it's, of course, now, as you can see, very interesting in the years to come to see the differences across Europe where the calculator is being used. And then if you click on here, the European Commission's symbol, you always come back to your overview of the projects. You can create as many projects and scenarios as you like. You can duplicate them, delete them, change the status. So this is kind of how the media carbon calculator works. Now, as promised, I was also asked to show you how the media carbon calculator can be integrated in existing workflows and also existing calculators. And of course, as you can imagine, we have already started such discussions. I can only show this to you in Yamdu, and this is, I promise, it's not a Yamdu roadshow, but it's just the first tool that is using the so-called media carbon calculator API. Just to give you some background, so in a tool like Yamdu, it's a project management tool, and you can, use it for recruiting and, have all your crew members all together, and you can run script imports and with AI detection, and there's a collaboration with Final Draft and all that stuff, and you can do your shooting schedules and information like this. So because potentially there is a lot of data in there from day one, like a single source of truth for the production, sustainability managers had the idea, well, maybe we should also add information that can then later be processed by something like the media carbon calculator. So for example, for sets, I have the narrative sets out of the script, and then I have locations in the real world, right? And I have, for example, like locations like the Rector's Palace in Dubrovnik, because maybe we're shooting a part in an international co-production in Croatia, right? And there you can already add information that might matter for this. This is like on-site energy. Is it from non-renewable? Is it a filming location? What's the area? How do I heat? How is waste separated? Information that matters later on. Or for example, the travel tool, which is just like for, for a coordinator to use this for travel management for cast and crew, and you have like the flights and it's automatically calculating the distance or the hotels, and you also find then not only the overnight stays but also like in this booking what kind of hotel is it, for example in this case a luxury hotel, etc. So all this is being used by coordinators across like hundreds and thousands of productions. But they don't necessarily think, of course, about sustainability. They just want to share an itinerary that the crew or cast member is then confirming, for example. But you could use this in a sustainability tool. So we've built in here also like a carbon calculator, but not a new calculator. It's actually reusing existing ones based on the production data. And you can already see I have a lot of countries here, and I can filter by countries. So especially for co-productions, I can just filter out, as you can see here below, the carbon emissions either as all, my entire budget, or just specific countries. And then in areas like energy, and that's kind of similar to the media carbon calculator or the other calculators that we've seen, I can also add activities, of course, manually, or I can also import them from all my locations, so from other areas that I've seen before. And in this case, for example, we have also then the location in Dubrovnik, right? And Yamdu knows the address, so it knows it's in Croatia. And I have activated here an international profile. So what we are offering here is, especially for co-productions, to use existing calculator profiles like the green shooting profile, the IDM profile, the Austrian profile, Swiss. We also have a license for the pair calculator by PGA Green and SEA. And of course, the media carbon calculator. And it does not only take the factors of the media carbon calculator, it actually takes them for Croatia in this particular case, and also shows you the source and stuff like this. So it's a very precise way of like then measuring your emissions, and you could do like exactly the same thing, for example, for accommodation or for ground travel and whatever. And you can easily use the media carbon calculator together with other existing calculators, and then again, of course, see what this means for a specific area. So here I have hotels in the US, so it will use pair. And then, of course, here for Croatia, for example, it will use the media carbon calculator. And for the German hotels, it will use the green shooting calculator. And later on, you can also run your exports. You can run the export by Klimaktiv and run the official green shooting calculator a report, or also Abschlussbericht if you want to. And of course, again, you can also use it for the media carbon calculator. And for example, just take the Austrian part for this particular production, and then just run again exactly the same report. So this is a project, of course, as you can imagine, we've done together with Klimaktiv to be absolutely sure that we are aligned, get the same results, same reports as with, for example, green shooting, but also for the international parts, again, here get the official report exactly the same as for the media carbon calculator. So this is what you can also do with the media carbon calculator in other calculators, other tools, using the media carbon calculator API, which is also available. And if you're interested in things like this, please talk to us. Here are some links. Maybe Uta has already shared them. Of course, first of all, it's the access to the media carbon calculator. Please click on it. Even we know in Germany and Austria, there are the existing calculators, but just try it. It's free, and provide us with feedback. There is also an email. It's the same also how you can reach out to us within the calculator itself. If you want to connect with me and talk about sustainability and whatever, please do. I'm on LinkedIn, don't be shy. And then there's also, in this case, if you're interested, a video where Justin Jansen from Klimaktiv and I are talking a bit more about those integrations, and also, of course, the media carbon calculator. So if you're interested, please take a look. Yeah, that's it. That's what we wanted to show you today. I hope it was interesting. And now let's see if there are questions. Thank you. Dankeschön.